Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask the speakers to the front, and if they want to take a seat up on the table. Uh, George, Charlie, Irene, and myself. I always get a little nervous at these things because I never know just how many people actually will show up to it. I'm never disappointed. It doesn't matter the size that we were out there. We talked to a lot of people, but what counts is what you take away from these events and share with your neighbors and share with all your friends. When you go home and you speak about the things that you heard, then that word starts to migrate and starts to get out there, and we start becoming more and more empowered as a community. So if we can just get our speakers up. How the format's going to work is I'm going to say a few words. Ted and as well, if you're around, could you come up? And David, can you? Yes, please. Yeah. I'm not good at instructions, David. So I imagine we'll still have people coming in, and if they could just take their seats and as we go along, I'll try and keep mine to very short words. I have a little bit to say. I have a lot of people to thank for doing this and helping out with this. So I'll get going now, and we'll get started here. Okay. So welcome everyone to what I think is going to be a pivotal event in our fight against this proposed landfill. First of all, like I said, I want to thank Rick Hughes and the Colombo Club for again hosting this event, or hosting another event. And I want to recognize the Colombo Club not only for opening its doors to all of us here today, but also for the other times that they've welcomed us and believed in our ability to stop this dump. I thought it very poignant to meet here in this hall, as it was a year and 7 months ago that we all met here, stunned at the news that a company wanted to put a massive landfill here in the heart of Oxford County. I wanted to thank all of the volunteers who make these events such a success and who make the commitment to deliver the flyers in their neighborhoods, and who have researched the material and sought out the allies in our plight, and who understand the meaning of preserving our environment and communities. I want to thank you all for rallying to this cause. Opal is pleased to have with us this afternoon Ingersoll's Mayor Ted Comiskey, Southwest Oxford's Mayor David Mayberry. I also want to welcome George Henry, First Nations. George. And also some very other important people that we've brought in. Irene Matheson, MP for London, and our very special guest, Charlie Angus, MP from up north, I'll call it, James Bay. North of Barrie, there you go. Who is also involved in a very similar fight, eerily similar fight, in the Adams Mine landfill. So I'm sure you've all heard of that. We did invite our local MP and our local MPP. I don't know if Ernie made it. I know David McKenzie flat out turned us down, didn't want to make it here for this, which I think is important. We're talking about a company that is a foreign company, and I think that's a federal jurisdiction and needs to be addressed. We should remember that. Yes, you're absolutely right. As I said before, many of us met here a year ago, and or over a year and a half ago, looking around at each other and asking all sorts of questions. Who was going to fight this? How do we fight this? And we didn't even know where we were going at that point. It was at the end of the evening where a group of us got together and formed Opal. And from then on, we made a vow that we would get together, learn as much as we possibly could about the environmental process, and also communicate that to you. And I think to date we've done a very good job about that. Since then, we've learned all about Walker's proposal to create a landfill with 17 million tons of industrial, commercial, institutional, and residential waste, much of it proposed to come from the Greater Toronto Area. We have learned about Ontario's landfill approval process and helped people get involved in the early stages of the environmental process. We've communicated with all levels of government through countless letters and phone calls. We've visited the Ministry of the Environment. We've spoken in front of our area councils. We've held information events and shared info through our newsletter. The big question that I get most frequently is, where are we in this dump thing, and are we winning? Well, where we are now. Walker is hoping to be able to proceed with an environmental assessment. This won't be the final approval for them, but it would mean that it would be another step closer for them. So we are in the terms of reference period. And this is terms of reference is referred to as the roadmap of the tests and study that they need to do and what Walker wants to proceed with. This is why we are here today, to appeal to you, to talk to your neighbors, and to ask them to voice their opposition to the landfill. We're here today because we only have until October 30th to try and stop this insane proposal at this stage, and to stop it now. The proposed site for Walker's landfill is 200 acres. It is at the heart of Oxford, right at the doorsteps of our communities. This is our home. We live here. We invested in our properties. We work here as farmers and manufacturers, as employees and business owners. Our children go to school here. They play in parks within view and smelling distance of the proposed site. Most importantly, we drink the water. We all share this, and the air that we breathe. Opal sought out and hired water and air experts to challenge Walker at the provincial level, and we retained our own legal representation in the best environmental law firm in Canada, the people's firm, CELA, the Canadian Environmental Law Association. We're fundraising to pay for these experts, so please consider making a donation today. I'll let Howard explain a little later. These experts are a big part of our fight to protect the county, and they will be with us through the critique Walker's landfill plans, all the way to a court hearing if necessary. Join us today as we send a message to Walker, Caramuse, and the Ministry of the Environment that we will not allow our lives to be put in danger and our way of life not destroyed by this massive landfill. We don't have a lot of money. We don't hold great political clout. What we have are people with heart and communities that care. We are going to win this. Yes, I believe we are winning. We know a lot about this dump thing now. I have a lot of hope that we will stop the landfill, and together we need to keep spreading the word that this is not a done deal. Thank you. I'm going to shuffle the deck a little bit. I think David was, we're going to try and get out of here, but David is Southwest Oxford's mayor and has been a resident for some time now, I would imagine, his whole life. So these people care about this community just as much as the rest of us do, and we shouldn't fault them for that. Many of them would sit in the front. I'm just going to go into this sort of. Many of them would have front porch or a backyard view of the site, and prevailing winds would see them most affected by this putrid smell. I'm talking of his own constituents. Mayor Maryberry is a longtime resident of the area, and I just spoke of generations that he's had. He's had an interest in progressive diversion and treatment of waste. And thank you, Mayor Maryberry, for joining us today.
First of all, I don't think it's a good idea to clap before you hear what I have to say. And second of all, probably whatever I'm going to say isn't that good that it's really worth clapping. I would say, however, to Steve's comment or introduction, that my grandchildren who live across the road from me are the 8th generation on the same farm. So that says something about how long we've been around. Now somebody out there is going to say, well, that's great. It's probably the fact that it's a good farm, or conversely, you're just too poor to move. But I'm hoping actually that we'll be around for at least another 8 generations. Steve said he wanted this to be relatively short, our comments, so they will be. And I've written them down because if I don't, then I start to wander. So I'm not going to waste your time about talking about my personal opinions of landfill. I think I've been very clear. I'm not in favor of using landfill to address our garbage problem. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Human beings are the only species that actually manufacture waste, that create products that are not part of a natural life cycle of the planet. We have the ability and I believe responsibility to be a waste-free, garbage-free society. We've chosen not to be. For the sake of the future of this planet, I believe we've got to do better. As I say, I recognize you're not here to listen to my rants about garbage. I also believe in history. I think it's a great teacher, even if I'm a slow learner. History is not simply the story of antisocial activities of some misdirected people. It's also the story of how those who knew better responded for the greater good of community. Today, this event is one of those responses. Today, we have the opportunity to say we know better and we want better for our fellow citizens and our collective future. I don't remember who wrote it, but somebody once wrote, "History teaches us that there are no invincible foes." I think that's an important message. Regardless of the proponent's wishes, this landfill proposal is not a done deal. This landfill proposal is not an invincible foe unless we choose to run away. The terms of reference is really just the beginning of this, in my opinion, misguided proposal. Walker has established the areas for study that they believe will demonstrate this site is or could be safe. I disagree. I think they've missed a number of concerns along the way. Now, I can understand that my concerns for the health and well-being of my community are not exactly aligned with their concerns. Or make no mistake, this proposal for a landfill is not a charitable act. Walker has stated up front from the very beginning that this is a business venture, that there is an expectation of profit. I'm certainly not opposed to businesses making profit, but it can't be at the expense all of you come in. We have an opportunity and I believe a responsibility to make our voices heard as well. Each person has the right to respond to the terms of reference. But remember, you need to do it before the end of the month. If you don't know where to send the comments, please contact myself or the Township office. We'll be happy to provide the address. I encourage each of you to raise the issues that are of concern to you. Some of your concerns should be shared by the rest of the community, but others might affect only you. Every issue should be raised. You have the chance to speak up, so please, I urge you to do so. For many people, the greatest concern is the groundwater. How will this proposal impact the water that feeds your family and wells, now and for the next few decades or maybe even centuries? The proposal suggests that a liner will be engineered to protect the groundwater. I wonder, can the proponent show anywhere where an engineered liner constructed in similar circumstances has proven effective for a reasonable period of time? 30, 40, 50 years? The proposal is based on a liner of which there appears to be little evidence that it'll be 100% effective over the lifetime of the landfill. In responding to the terms of reference, I encourage you to ask for conclusive evidence that this proposed solution has worked and, more importantly, will work. For many people, there's a concern about air quality and the impact on our health. I encourage you to request not only a definitive study of the potential contaminants, but also the cumulative effects of this proposal and the ongoing quarry operations. The proponent has been keen to demonstrate their environmental awareness through their activities at their Thorold campus. Yet they don't include any potential activities, future activities for this site in their study. I realize that it's true that they don't need to ask for an environmental assessment for adding a composting or recycling facility in the future. But to me, it would make sense if you're planning for something that would or could add further impacts to the community, that you might want to study it up front. Oxford's acting medical officer of health, Dr. Neal, and the county's Department of Public Health have indicated that the human health risk assessment should be expanded beyond the proposed limited study to include the impacts of this proposal on the overall health of the community. Simply studying the individual effects of some of the issues, isn't good enough. The human health study should include more than chemical or biological impacts. It should be expanded to study and understand the potential physiological and emotional impacts as well. As I said, the organizers asked us to be brief. Come on, I'm a politician. So let me finish by simply saying that Southwest Oxford Council has endorsed the Joint Municipal Coordinating Committee's peer review team report, and they have endorsed the draft additional Southwest Oxford Council comments. We were waiting for Dr. Neal's comments to provide direction on how Council wanted to phrase our comments on a human health impact assessment. Southwest Oxford Council comments are public information. You're welcome to use them to help frame your comments. The final version should be done this week. Next Wednesday at 7 p.m., County Council will review and hopefully endorse the Joint Municipal Coordinating Committee peer review team's report and the Acting Medical Officer of Health comments as well. The resolution from the town of Ingersoll asking the county to not receive waste from outside the county should be brought forward as well. I hope you will come out and demonstrate your concern for our collective community health by filling the council chambers. You are all most definitely welcome. Finally, I beseech you, I beg you, to take a few minutes and voice your concerns about the terms of reference to the Ministry of Environment. I believe it's your right. And more importantly, I believe it's your responsibility. Let's prove that history is right. This proposal is not an invincible foe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Mayberry. I do believe you did go over by 1.5 minutes. Our next guest is, I've known him for a number of years, not too well personally, but over the last 1.5 years, gotten to know him quite a bit more. Quite a guy in our town, and I've come to respect him over the conversations that we've had together. And I'd like to welcome Mayor Ted Comiskey to speak with us for a few minutes now. Ted is a long-time Ingersoll resident, and his family has lived in the area for generations. He's been very vocal in the media and at Ingersoll and County Council since the landfill was proposed, saying, why risk it? And we agree with that. Why risk it? This proposal needs to put us all at risk. This proposal puts us all at risk, and it needs to be stopped now. So at that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Ted Comiskey.
This is where I wish I had the guts to say, I agree with Dave completely. Thank you very much. A year and a half ago, when this proposal came forward, I understood about the environmental assessments that were going to have to be done. I was not a scientist of air, of water, of noise, of social impact. But now, after a year and a half, I'm no longer a science history major in any of these areas either. In fact, I believe I've gone down instead of up. I thought I knew something about it, but I don't. And it scares me. I do not know the impact that's going to take place with this situation. So I came up with a line and it says, why risk it? Robert Burns wrote some magnificent poems, Auld Lang Syne, etc. But he wrote a poem, the late 1700s, of Men and Mice. The last two verses are very important to me. It's a story about how he's plowing the field and he comes across, he pulls up a mouse's nest, and the mouse is sitting there, his house destroyed. And the farmer looks down at the mouse and he says the poem. But the last two verses go, but little mouse, you are not alone. Improving foresight may be vain. The best laid plans of mice and men go often awry, and leave us nothing but grief and pain for promised joy. Still you are blessed compared with me, for the present only touches you. But oh, I backward cast my eye on prospects dearly, and forward though I cannot see, I guess and fear. In other words, why risk it? We look at catastrophes that happen around the world, and I suppose they're done by man, by science, and by nature. And we say these things do happen. We know that Walkerton, the Valdez oil situation, certainly the cruise ship off Italy lately, all man-made problems, errors that happened. We know that the science with the shuttle or with any other event that science wasn't aware of at the time, to think that an O-ring could freeze and crack. Science fails. And nature, certainly, we don't have to really look too far when we see the Japanese earthquake and we say, let's build a nuclear reactor right here and it'll be safe. Or let's have everything fine and build a property like Godrich and worry about a tornado coming across the water, which never should have happened. Things happen. Why risk it? If there was a chant that we could make, I believe it should be, why risk it? If the air, if the science with environmental assessments say that it'll be fine, the particles that we breathe in are numerously small, that it won't make an effect, that people who have illnesses, asthmas right now, they shouldn't be affected, the answer to that would be, why risk it? Is the water going to be okay? Is our water flowing underneath the wells and the cavity of the pit itself? Are they flowing away from our wells that are going to be contaminated? Will they rise again somewhere around Norwich? Do we know that? What's the answer? Why risk it? Why risk the contamination of agricultural soil? Is the traffic going to bother us? Should there be any problems if there's trouble on the 401 and you have 100 trucks coming through Ingersoll? What if they cannot get to the site itself and are sitting on the side of the roads, and whether they're smelling or whether they're leaking or whatever they're doing? Is that ever going to happen? No, they say it won't happen. But why risk it? The social aspect, to me, which is the strongest. This has bothered me for a year and a half. It's bothered everyone here. The social impact on this, just to ourselves, is something that is a troublesome thing. When I have an elderly lady come up to me and say, Ted, I voted for you. Will you please tell me when I quit drinking the water? I say, you can always drink the water. Don't worry about it. You can always drink the water. the county will make sure that the chemicals that are involved within the water will make it good for you to drink. Don't worry, don't stress. Is that a social impact? Of course it is. The fears that get put onto us because of this incident are social impacts. And we say, why risk it? It's not just for Ingersoll. It's not just for Oxford County. Dave is phenomenally smart when it comes to looking at other directions. We shouldn't be putting garbage in the ground as it is. We don't know the total effect at the end of it. We look at a landfill site and we say, okay, that'll suit us and that'll handle our county needs. But what should we be doing about it? Well, we should be recycling. We should be reclaiming. We should be looking after our site. And we have done so and extended its life, I believe, 19 years, Dave, close like that. Extended the life of it beyond. And if we looked after our recycling, we could extend it a lot farther than that, which means that we're caretakers of our own waste. Next Wednesday, I've made a motion to bring forward a notice of motion at the last meeting that the motion will be brought forward to not to have foreign material coming into a landfill. And I think I would love to see all of you there on the 23rd at an evening meeting at 7 o'clock at the county building to show that support, if it's there, to say this is how we want. The bottom line of the motion reads, therefore it be resolved that the County of Oxford planning staff is hereby directed to conduct all required public consultations, give all required statutory public notices, and hold all required public meetings in order to bring forward an official plan amending section 5.3.5 and such other sections of the county official plan as may be necessary to ensure that the county's land use policies prohibit the consideration of new landfill sites where such sites are proposed to be established primarily for the importation of waste from outside of the county and not for the purposes of addressing the county's waste disposal needs. Walker looks at environmental assessments, and I believe they are knowledgeable enough that a lot of these will be met and addressed. Science will say, yes, but if we do this to the water, it'll be okay. Yes, if we do this to the air, it'll be okay. Yes, if we do this to the dust, it'll be okay. Science can work with you. But what can't work is social impact. The message that has to be sent to the ministry, to Walker itself, to say, hey, not in Oxford County. We have a population that is the heart and soul of southern Ontario, our beautiful valley of the Thames, and certainly our agricultural direction, which is the heart and soul and how all these communities started to begin with. My last note is to Opal itself. Remembrance Day is coming up. And that's where we remember all the people that have sacrificed their lives to make us be able to stand here today. Opal, 18 months ago, stood up and started the public forum to say, we cannot let this happen. I respect you, Opal. Respect what you've done. You are a body within the community that makes us politicians smile with the fact that this is what it's all about. You will be remembered down the road for stopping this dump. Thank you.
Well, there's some powerful words of encouragement, for sure. One of the things that as I introduce our next guest, is I want you to think of all the issues that we fight today, not only on the home front, environmental front, or all the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I want you to think of a lot of these things are man-made. I talk of windmill farms, not that I against or opposed or anything like that, but I want you to think when we invite industry in, when we look at other operations, gas plants, how we deal with the environment, solar farms, all of these things that we oppose can be taken down at some point. At some point in the future, they can be taken down. With a landfill, this is a permanent thing. This is here to stay. You can't take that away. Once it's in the ground, it's there forever. It's there for our kids, their kids, and generations beyond. And there will be no way to get that out of the ground. Remember that in going forward, and remember that as I introduce our next guest. As he fights all of these things that we talk about. George Henry, who joins us from the First Nation, is passionate about protecting the Thames River. He's also called it by a traditional name, the Antler River. The federal treaties are supposed to protect the Thames for traditional uses, but instead George finds himself having to protect the source of fish and recreation on behalf of his community, something we are all familiar with here in Oxford County. Thank you for sharing your concerns with us, and I hope we can work together for the benefit of all our communities and this environment. George?
Well, I'd like to say hello to everybody here, and you very handsome people. I want to thank Steve and his group for inviting me. What he said about all fronts, yes, we are. And I want to talk just a bit about our relationship with the earth. You know, the history goes back that this river was formed 10,000 years ago at the last glacier. Before then, there was a lake here. And that's what makes up such a prime source of resources. Because the Cambrian shield here, the shield that holds the Great Lakes up to make them pure, is about a 2-mile thick rock. And then there's salt under there. And then there's oil and gas. So we're fighting a lot of fronts. The big issues, the big gestalt issues, I call them. And how does that reflect on us as human beings? Well, it's like life and death. I mean, every big civilization, they seem to hurt themselves in the past, and we got history of that. And it had to do with a lot of things we're fighting today, and that's how do we get rid of the things that we use? And some First Nations have done good things like that throughout the 10,000 years that we've been in this area. We had civilizations that lived on top of each other, right up and down this river. I'm sure if you dig deep enough, you're going to find a lot of our ancestors buried here, or at least have the remains that they had been here. And I understand by just coming up here to Centerville that there has been some bones that were found, you know, that relates back, could be any one of the civilizations that's been here. Well, the Chippewa of the Thames people, my people, we've been up here approximately 350 years living on this river. And one of the reasons why we live on this river is because we call it Anishkansipi, which means a place to drink fresh water, pure water. This river is made up of springs from the underground rivers that flow through the sands. And it comes into this river to make this a beautiful river. And how can anybody in their right mind think of destroying it for our future generations, like our children? So today, we have a big fight on our hands. We're trying to stop the other things that are happening in your community, like the bitumen that they're going to be putting in the pipes. You should think this is a disaster with this dump. It's even worse with if that gets into our groundwater, there will be no life on this river at all. So it's important that we come together and have relations with each other to have our governments protect these waters. I know they put a few laws together, but they're so full of holes that there isn't any really protection. It's up to you folks as people, as human beings. Because in our history, there was 4 things that the Creator gave us. And first it was the physical kind, which is the moon, the sun, the stars, the earth. Then there was the plant kind, and we call it our sisters. They give us the medicines and the plants we eat and the food that's nutritious. In this country, we have the corn. That corn has been around 10,000 years. It was domesticated in South America, and we have one of the greatest abundant corn farms today in all these communities. We have to protect those foods, and it's really only us can do that. And we must have our governments include everybody in how to look after the future. Then you won't have any risks to think about. We can't wait anymore to be remedial. We have to start applying our own thoughts about how we're going to have our generation. Now, I've been living in this community in the 7th generation since Tecumseh had helped Canada become Canada. Him and Brock, they fought against the Americans who were invading this country that wanted these resources, and they saved it. So we were part of that. We were a tribe that fought in that battle, and as much as a lot of other First Nations in this area. And a lot of you folks, your ancestors fought in those battles too, to protect the rights of having a country that was pristine. Now, I just picked up a book from one of the neighbors that kind of gave it to us. We were at a protest down over on Glover Mill Road, just outside of Thorndale. And he put a beautiful farm up there, a beautiful farm. Horse farm, and it's overlooking the river. And a fellow by the name of Richard Bain had done a book, and I brought that book with me because I look at it every day to see how the river looks in other areas, and it's beautiful. So it's really important that you stand up on this one, and we will support you in any way we can. We're trying to get the Constitution of Canada to put natural laws in, like some of the South American countries are doing today, so that all this kind of thing we don't even have to think about because it'll be protected by law. And we're in the Constitution, in Section 35 and 39, that says that we have our inherent rights. Well, this is our inherent rights to have good water. That is one of our inherent rights. So we have the law of Canada stating that. So we're looking at how we can put policies into. We have put forward that no landfill site should be used for any kind of dump. They should make it into a park after and let the people have it. Any company should be done. So those are the kind of compacts that we need to do. I know the governments like impacts. They say, well, how is it going to impact you? And that's after the fact. Of course it's going to impact everyone. And they don't give us much education about it. That's because we don't have any natural laws. In our communities, our First Nations people, we have 3 laws. One is learn where you come from, where your history are, where are you from. I know where I'm from. I'm from Ohio, Mississippi River. We were there back 1,100 years ago. We moved into this area, and we're mound people. We have mounds just right here in Ontario, up around Peterborough. So we've been here a long time, and we always were very environmentally astute to what we had to do and could do with the lands. So it's important that everybody begins to understand that. Because in the future, the only connection to the Creator of God is our children. And we must protect those kind of things. Like, for instance, now going back to what I said about the kinds. We had the plant kind, and we eat the fruits from those plantings. And then we have the animal kind. Animals got rights too. Trees got rights. And that's what we need to protect in the Constitution. And any of the governments today we got to make sure that we vote people in that start thinking about the protection of our children, because those are the most important people that we have, and we teach them what they know as adults. They're not born with all this education. We teach them how we should live. My grandfather said, you don't disrupt nature. Nature, we belong to nature. We don't own nature as a people, as human beings. And in the fourth kind, we are the humankind that must be the stewards of all of this, because the Creator gave us some reasoning so that we could take two abstracts together and come up with an idea. I think what happens in cases like this, if we allow economic development to control us, you allow those people with power and money to control the government. And that's happening all over the world. And we're losing. The nature's losing. We're going to lose. Although Mother Earth will always be here for a long time, but she's going to clean it up. And we're going to be right in its way. So I'm asking you, like the mayor mentioned, let's just think about what we're doing here. Let's create these ideas so that we can put something together and come up with an idea. There's all kinds of things you can do with that big quarry over there. You can make a nice park out of it. You can make a recreation center. And think about making the Thames River a green belt, like we did with Toronto. It took the Mohawk people many years to get that green around Toronto, and we should be doing it with the river too. That no industry can build within a mile or two of that without because it's the industry that's going to be hurting us in 100 years. Back in 1900, everybody made their trades and they made money themselves. Today, they're all working for somebody. When they closed down, like the car factories, everybody's out of work. So we have to get back to the industries that will sustain us in the long term. So my people are doing that now. I know we're on the front lines. We have a few highways closed down today, a couple borders, but you have to put action to that, because nobody's going to listen to you on paper, because you have just bureaucrats reading those papers. If it doesn't fit his job, and he may lose it, he's gonna just throw it in this landfill if you allow it to do it. But anyway, I'm here to support PAL and the other organizations that are in the building today, and we will continue to be open with what we're doing. It's all about education. I spent a lot of time. I just finished writing a play about Tecumseh and how he educated people by the land. I'll be doing a couple of movies in the future, but we have to see the picture, and you have to get to your young people. Now, I don't see too many young people in this crowd, but we need to get them here, because they're the ones that are going to be the leaders for the future. They're the ones that's going to take your ideas and protect these natural things that we have, that was given to us by the Creator, and given us the ability to look after them. So I ask you to do the best you can in order to support all the people who are not in favor of this stuff. Thank you very much for listening.
I just want to touch on something that George touched on, and that is responsibility. And it kind of underscored what he was talking about. What I want to talk to you about is corporate responsibility. It is the responsibility of Caramuse to follow through on their rehabilitation plan. The original plan that gave them license to quarry there, and that their promise was to return the land back to the way it was when they first started digging. It needs to return to that, not into a landfill that they're proposing with this partner. Our next guest comes from us in a recent contact that we just made, and it is an Irene Matheson, MP for representing London and the current opposition critic for seniors and deputy critic for heritage. Irene has been in the media recently talking about her efforts to return the federal protection to the Thames under the Navigable Waters Act. When Opal provided her with information about Walker's landfill proposal, She was deeply concerned and realized the potential for the landfill pollution to flow downriver to her constituents and eventually into the Great Lakes, London's drinking water source. I'd like to thank Irene for writing the letter to the dump decision maker, Environment Minister Bradley, voicing strong opposition to Walker's mega landfill plans and passing along the enlightening letter to the London and Chatham's mayors. At this time, I'd like to introduce Irene Matheson, MP for London.
I know.
I know too.
Can you hear me? Okay, I accept the fact that you can't see me. I've been harassed by podiums before. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm most grateful for the invitation from Opal, and I feel very privileged to be on the stage with Tom McSwiggan, Ted Conacy, David Mayberry, George Henry, and well, you're going to hear from Charlie. I won't say anything more about Charlie. I have, I think, a little bit to bring to this discussion. It occurred to me while I was listening to everyone that I've been through this before. Charlie's going to talk about that at length. But back from 1990 to 1994, I was a parliamentary assistant to NDP Environment Minister Ruth Greer. And Ruth, just absolutely incredible. She was very clear about the need to protect our communities, our resources. And when the Adams mine was proposed for Kirkland Lake, Ruth said, no, there will be no garbage dump at Kirkland Lake in the Adams mine. And she sent me up there to communicate that message, to talk to the community, to hear information. And in the process of that, I realized that small communities like Beachville are very often targeted by proponents for these kinds of projects like mega dumps, because these proponents figure that the communities, small communities, have fewer resources to fight back. I think it's important to remember, and this was alluded to, that the proponents are here to make money. When I was in the Ministry of the Environment, we talked about garbage dumps and landfills being the reverse of a gold mine. You put all kinds of crap, refuse in, and money jumped out. There is a great deal of money to be made out of landfill sites. Don't let that very important fact escape you. And also, David made reference to needing conclusive evidence about the safety of these landfill sites. Well, there isn't any. I learned as the parliamentary assistant, I went to landfill sites all over the province, that liners leak no matter what they say, no matter how much engineering goes into it. Liners leak. So, like you, I'm deeply concerned about the well-being of this community, of the Thames River, in fact, of all the rivers and lakes in Canada. Now, unfortunately, last spring's omnibus budget bill had a whole lot more in it than just budget. The federal government stripped away considerable protections from lakes and rivers. In fact, 98% of Canada's lakes and rivers are no longer protected. And they did this by eliminating those waterways from the Navigable Waters Protection Act. George talked about loopholes. Well, this is one hell of a loophole. And while the Conservative government tried to sell this as cutting red tape, helping out communities, the reality is that the consequences of unregulated development will, not might, but will have a detrimental impact on our environment. And nowhere is that truer than with water resources. Now, because of a lack of coordinated planning and a reasonable and fair regulatory framework, that means that not just one community can be negatively impacted, but the consequences of what happens here, as was mentioned, will impact communities downstream. London, Ontario, Chatham, all of us are vulnerable, and First Nations communities down the Thames River in the Oneida, Chippewa, Munsee settlements. So with all of this in mind, my NDP colleagues and I followed the lead of our environment critic, Megan Leslie, and we have a series of private members' bills that we've tabled, and the impetus is to return watersheds like the Thames River, like many lakes and rivers, to the protection of the Navigable Waters Act. And in terms of the Thames, it's a heritage river. This is a heritage river. It's iconic. It's a symbol of our history, our culture, our identity. George made reference to that this area has been settled by communities for 10,000 years. It is an important river in regard to flora and fauna. Carolinian forests are found all along the river. Beautiful, remarkable Carolinian forests, and the kind of vegetation and delicate wildlife that we don't find many places. Things like tulip trees, pawpaw, Kentucky coffee trees, and sassafras. And I think that this is a very, very important argument for this community to use. This is a heritage river. It is important to the present and to the future. So we have this short-sighted conservative legislation, and are very concerned about the fact that it doesn't positively impact our communities. There's going to be a lot of negative, detrimental effects. I'm not going to belabor things. I'm just going to encourage you to remember the kind of, I guess, power and importance that you have as a community. You have two mayors, you have Opal, and you have some political entities who are on your side, but you have yourselves. You have the strength of community and what you believe in. So, like previous speakers, I'm going to encourage you to demand that your elected representatives in this area listen, and that the provincial government pay attention to the need to have extra and important instruments in the terms of reference to make sure that when the time comes, every voice has been heard and every measure has been taken. Now, I know Tom's going to introduce Charlie, and I want to just end by saying that Charlie is quite remarkable. He stood up to Goliath. He went to Kirkland Lake, and he helped the community around the Adams mine to organize. He short-circuited that project, and I want you to remember that project was the special purview of the Premier of Ontario. Mike Harris wanted that project to go through. He told the Ministry of the Environment, that project is going through. I'm the Premier. You make it happen. Didn't happen. Didn't happen because of a strong and caring community. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. My office is at your disposal. I've brought a petition for you to sign. I have some postcards. I've been taking the private members bill that I developed for the Thames to the doorstep of London residents all summer. And so the postcards are there. And what my hope is that I can take a stack of petitions and postcards and say to this, I was going to say so-called Minister of the Environment. I'm going to be more polite. I'm going to say to the Federal Minister of the Environment, the people of Beachville care about their river. The people of London care about their river. And you fail to listen at your peril. This is important. We're watching. Canadians are watching. Communities are listening. So you need to act to do your job. Protect community, protect the environment, care about the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Irene. So much what she's talking about, we're saying all along here that it's so important that we've got to protect what we have here, and all the way down right through the Great Lakes, which reaches right into the ocean if you want to take it that far. And what they are proposing globally is not a very good thing for all of us. Our next guest brings us to our final guest today, and I'd like to say we were keeping pretty good time. And I know you're waiting to hear from Charlie, and patiently. And actually, I was reading some of Charlie's things on Google when we first wanted to have Charlie down here, and one of them was quite an interesting thing in that he's a musician. That's correct? Professional musician, and our own mayor, Ted Comiskey, is a musician as well. So I was kind of hoping maybe that they break into song at some point. That I know my son is an avid guitar player. Maybe we could call him up and then come down and play as well. Anyway, since the beginning of the landfill battle, we've realized a strong resemblance of Walker's dump plants to the Adams mine dump, where the Toronto's trash was destined for a mine near Kirkland Lake. Charlie Angus is not just an MP, he's a person with deep personal interest in fighting the unjust, protecting the environment, and championing the protection of safe drinking water. Today he will share with us the inspiring saga of the Adams mine dump fight. I recently picked up his book, Unlikely Radicals, which I like to think Opal and all of its alliance partners are all unlikely radicals. I'm certainly not a radical by nature. But anyway, be that as it may, it was a very fitting book. I found that when I was reading it, I found that you could take every character in that book and just replace it with the names of the people that are involved in this battle, and you would have and you would have the exact same storyline. It's incredible. I think Mr. McGinty, who's a big figure in that, and he also wrote a book about the Adams landfill proposal. And it's amazing. We have our own Joe Ling, who could easily fit that same position. It's that eerie in nature. Anyway, I won't burden you with any more of that talk. But anyway, I'm glad he came down. He came a long way to speak with us. And I'm glad he's here today to talk to us. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Angus.
Well, thank you, and I am very not happy to be here. I'd love to be here on other reasons, but I'm not happy to be here for this reason. And I can see that you're not happy either. So I would suggest that we suck it up and get over it. You've got a fight on your hands, and you didn't pick this fight. It picked you. And I'm here to give you my opinions, and I feel very comfortable giving you my opinions because you look just like the folks back home. I feel so comfortable in this room. I started my political career, I was a musician. The word is was. The Adams mine killed my musical career because I spent years fighting a god-darn dump. And the only person who hates the Adams mine right now more than me is Pamela Wallen and Mike Duffy, because if there had been no Adams mine, I never would have been a politician, and I wouldn't be after them today. So, anyways, I'm going to give you a few thoughts on what you're facing and what you need to consider. I was trying to write the 10 commandments of fighting dumps, so I don't know if I've got all 10 here or not, and I don't know if it's all that relevant. Number one, it's got nothing to do with science. It's about what's easy. You got a hole. So they say, hey, we got a hole. What should we do with the hole? We'll fill it with garbage. Now, I was so moved by my colleagues here speaking. I have to say, I don't have a problem with landfills. I mean, I do. I wish we didn't have them, but we make garbage. So if we're going to have landfills, they have to be done scientifically to the best of our ability. And you know what? They still leak. No matter what you do with a landfill, no matter how careful you are, they still leak. But there are still some principles that you apply. So when you're looking at a dump site, you would think, let's find something that is the least threatening of all. Not the best, but the least threatening. And so you tend to look at clay sites. You want like maybe 60 meters of clay separating from the groundwater. And then what you do is you want very narrow cells that you can build all the liners. So if one cell starts to leak, it's not necessarily that the other cells will then leak into it. And it's narrow and it's not a lot of pressure. So that would be a scientific way. And I'll tell you, that site, as best as it's manufactured, will still leak. What you don't do is put 17 million tons of garbage in a quarry. Any scientist will tell you that. And you don't put it on a limestone quarry where you have sinkholes. And you don't put it on a site that is right beside your waterways. The reason they're doing this is because there's money to be made. So remember that. It has nothing to do with science. Number 2, nice people end up with dumps. That's a fact. Is your member of parliament here today? Is your member of provincial parliament here today? I would fire them. Do they not give a damn about the future of your community? And I'm not saying that because I'm a New Democrat. I'm saying that because that's how I got involved in politics. Because the people who were there to represent us, they didn't want to stand up. They didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't seem to care that we were going to have 60 million tons of garbage dumped into our region that we would deal with for 1,000 years. Well, if they don't care about that, I'd say nice people end up with dumps, and determined people get rid of people like that and replace them with people who will listen to people. So remember that. You have the obligation to take this on. Number 3, if you trust the process, you will get a dump. That's a fact. Now, that might sound cynical and crazy, but I've seen it and I learned it. And it was the single biggest eye-opener that happened to me in my political life, was to realize that the process is there for a reason. Which leads me to number 5. It's not about the birds. It's not about the dust. It's not about the noise, and it's not even about the trucks. It's about the water, the water, the water, the water. That's what it's about. So, and that's not to say the other issues aren't important. But when you hear them talk to you, they should be able to answer all the questions about the water, the water, the water, the water. But they don't want you focusing on the water. So remember what's at stake here. I was trying to add up, but I'm not very good at math. I got to admit that. I got 52 in grade 10 math. But I was listening to our mayor talk about 8 generations here. 8 generations in his family on this land. And a little further back than that even. Do you know what the contaminating lifespan of garbage is? It's 1,000 years. I'm not making that up. That's what the ministry says, 1,000 years. Do you know how many chemicals are on an average dump site? 20,000 plus. Do you know how much the Ministry of Environment actually pays attention to, monitors, has rules over? About 65. Now, I understand they might add some brownfield in. Won't that be nice? They'll get some cover for you. So what they're going to do is they're going to take contaminated Detroit, contaminated Hamilton. What a beautiful country you got here. Don't you think that'd be great to take all the contaminated brownfields out of Detroit and Hamilton and Toronto, and they'll give them to you as your new backyard? So what's in that? PCBs, hydrocarbons? That's sitting on your aquifer now. I'll tell you. I'm losing my track here. I hope I'm not getting. Number 4, nobody is coming to help you. Which leads me into number 5. There's no such thing as a magic bullet. There's no amazing rush to the finish line and it gets over with. The only thing that stops it is hard work. The Adams mine was over 20 years. Site 41, which we just fought and won up in Midland, was over 20 years. In Site 41, they beat it initially, and the government put it back on the list. Which leads me to the next one. If you invite the vampire across the door, you can't get rid of the vampire. Or in the Bible it says, you know, that once the demon finds a comfortable home, he invites all his friends. If they get in, they're bringing lots more with them. And I'm looking at that site, and I'm saying, well, geez, how come there's just this one little rectangle? What's that? Oh, that's the proposed dump site. And what's going to be in that rectangle? Oh, 17 million tons of garbage. Lifespan of 20 years. Oh, what's that other rectangle? It's even bigger. And the other one, that's future growth. They aren't picking this to dump 17 million tons and then put some grass on and go away. It's very, very, very difficult to get a landfill permit. If they got this permit, they ain't going away. So 17 million becomes 30 million, becomes 45 million tons. That's what you're facing. And they'll all say, it'll never happen, it'll never happen. It's really easy to get a permit extension once you're in. And you know what? The ministry, 15 years down the road, no matter what government, they're not going to be worrying about you because you guys already accepted a dump. Well, if they were happy enough with the first 17 million, why don't we give them another 20 million on top of that? So you're adding exponentially, sitting on those sinkholes above your water table. This isn't doomsday scenarios. This is what landfills are about. I got a few more things. A landfill of this nature will make or break your community. Actually, I should reverse it. It will break your community, or it will make your community if you stand up. Now, what do I mean by breaking your community? Try inviting doctors to the dump capital of Ontario. Think about that. We learned that in Kirkland Lake. Our doctors started to move away. We lost about 5 doctors over a period of 3 years. We're still picking up the pieces. Because doctors, professionals, they got choices. They can go wherever they want. And they don't like to go where there's considered to be a dump capital. Think about your land values. Now, it's not your job to save the world at this point. And I'm not a proponent of NIMBYism. If it's a proposal that is safe and it was your garbage and we had to put it someplace, well, okay, we'll all be upset. But you're being asked to take on the risk of other communities that you have no relationship whatsoever. And what it means to your community is what is your land values and what is the future of your properties. And I want to say that not in a narrow, I'm just worried about my property value. I'm thinking of that issue of the 8 generations in 1,000 years. 1,000 years, that was 2013 we're in today. 1,013. Man, the Normans hadn't even thought to go over and rape and pillage in England at that point. I mean, we still had Charlemagne and the Franks walking around in Europe. That is the contaminating period that you're dealing with. And I want to say I'm so proud to see the senior citizens out here. Because it's not your water that's going to be damaged. It's your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. And 8 generations from now, if that water does get contaminated, imagine them looking back at you and saying, oh, well, they didn't want to go out to a Saturday afternoon meeting. They didn't want to go and knock on a few doors. You have a responsibility. The First Nation people where I live say the 7 generations. Well, with garbage, it's a lot more than 7 generations. That's your obligation. I don't want to be negative about this, but this is your responsibility. This is your line in the sand. How could you have built a community over 8 generations to say, we're going to let these guys come in and have a crapshoot with our water, when the water is the lifeblood of your area? Believe me, I'm almost through my 10 commandments. Oh yeah, the thing about that is you become a sacrifice zone. That's an actual term. A sacrifice zone is what they decide all across North America. That's how they locate dumps. They call them sacrifice zones. They tend to be poor areas. They tend to be First Nation areas. They put their incinerators in black neighborhoods in the South. They like rural areas a lot because they think rural people will put up with it. And I say that they really, really don't understand rural people at all. Because there's more brains in this room about water than all their experts that they could hire on the planet. That's a fact. Which leads me to the most important. I know I've depressed the hell out of you. Don't look so gloomy. I'm just telling it like it is. I wish it wasn't this way, but it is this way. But it leads me to the most important rule of all, is that nobody can beat you if you choose to stand up. You have the power in this room. You have enormous resources within your own knowledge. Your knowledge of the water. Your knowledge of this land. The guys that they hire, they'll say anything. Because they're here and they're gone, this is what they do, they'll sign off on anything. I'm not saying that they're bad people, but that's what they do. But you can buffalo and sandbag that ministry a lot quicker than any of their experts can come up with the excuses. Because you know this land and you know what water means and you know the water flows better than they'll ever. They're not even going to want to study how the water flows. So you have the knowledge in this room. You also have the family links, the community links, your service organizations. You know, they always misread rural people because they just see rural people as all those people who weren't too bright enough to move to the city. But they don't understand the intense roots that we have here. And your roots are your neighbors and your friends and your people from your church groups. And your job is to go out and talk to them. It's their fight too. And if a community decides to stand up, it is unbeatable. That's a fact. And I'd like to tell you that there's another way to do this, that you could go to the ministry, that you can get a great report, that you could hire a really smart scientist. None of that is going to win this fight in the end. The only way to win this fight is to stand up and say, we are proud of the land that we live on, that we have a responsibility to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, and we are sure as heck not going to let somebody come in and play games with our groundwater because we have a greater responsibility. If you make that decision, and you talk to your friends, and you talk to your neighbors, and you let them know what's at stake, they're going to think you're crazy at first. But as they start to think about it, they're going to get as mad as you, and they're going to say, I'm not putting up with it anymore. So, I'm going to leave it there. I can't tell you how to win this fight. Only you can. But I'm looking at a room and I say, this looks just like the room of the people back home. And we won that fight. And we sure didn't want to be in that fight, and we were pretty sullen about it. And at a certain point, we decided we were going to make the other guys so sorry they ever heard of us that they would never, ever, ever come back again. And so far, it's worked. So good luck. I'm really proud to be here. You guys look just like the title of my book. You look like very unlikely radicals, but you got a fight ahead of you, and I know you can win. Thank you.
Oh, good. I get his 10 commandments.
If you can read them, I'll give them to you, my son.
First of all, I'm going to just do some quick announcements, and then I'd like to get to some questions. One, Charlie is going to be over on the side here. He's going to be he has books for sale that you can read about. I encourage you to read about it. It's almost laughable, the storyline. It's like word for word, right out of what's happening here in Oxford County. All the characters, all the cast members, just plug in names that you think are apropos. Also, our alliance members, the Oxford Coalition for Social Justice and Greenwatch. I should mention this week is very important. Before I get into this, it's important that we all leave today with a word to our neighbors and our other community members, and that is that a couple of events. One is very important. Ted mentioned it, that he is bringing to the floor at the Oxford County Council. I encourage all of you to show up for that. You need to show up for that. Support it. Make sure that all of those council members know that you are not in favor of this landfill. It needs to be sold there. It needs to be carried there, and that's the start of it. They'll carry the message forward to the proponent. They'll carry the message forward to the ministry, and that will start making a statement. We're not in favor of foreign landfill in our county, period. When you do show up there, bring a sign where you're from, be it Ingersoll, Zora, be it Blandford, Blenheim, be it from whatever municipality you happen to come from. Bring a sign and say where you're from. And back them up. Wear your dump shirts. Do whatever you can to make your voice heard in that council chamber. Another event that's happening next week, and this big push to the end of the month, is, again, I mentioned Oxford Social Justice and Greenwatch are putting on a series of workshops. And one of them that I was really encouraged about is letting our children understand what they could do with the quarries once they're all finished, and what they could do to rehabilitate that land. I found that really, and another one is the bee colonies. There's some exciting stories that are going on there, and not to mention the one that there is a shortage of bees anymore, the very thing that pollinates the land that we live on. But I think there's some really good stuff that's happening there as well. And also on the 25th, all of us will be delivering the form letters that you have filled out. Not only are we mailing them, but we are also going to be giving them to Ernie Hardiman ourselves, and that will be on the 25th. Is that correct, Brian? I have to tell you that this form letter writing, the encouragement of and getting folks out like yourselves to write letters, the grocery store, everything. 10,000 letters. What a statement that we are all opposed to this. That's a huge amount of people that are protesting this landfill. Even though they're not here, they still are against it. They just obviously can't be here for other reasons or whatever, but that 10,000 letters, that's incredible. So I'll open up the floor now to some questions, if there are. We have some people with microphones, if you guys want to get organized. The microphone men and women. Oh, geez. Another big event is and I've already labeled it, Mike. I'm sorry, but it's the out of water boat show, which is happening tomorrow.
Out of water boat show.
All of you know the lake that exists there right now. All of you know our fishermen who spent a night on the lake fishing. And by the way, he still hasn't showed up for court for that yet. But that was a lot of courage to do that, Mike. To go out there and sit on that lake and really feel what it's like out there, and you've communicated that to a lot of us about what is down there, and obviously it's pristine, and it needs to be kept pristine. So the out of water boat show is going to happen at 1 o'clock.
brilliant. That's brilliant.
Okay. Any questions? Please just raise your hand and we'll try to get a mic to you. Oh, first one.
Um, I currently attend a public school, and that school we're not allowed to talk about the landfill and its issues. What can I do about that? What can we, as a generation of children, do about that?
I think you should ask to meet with the school board trustees and bring a delegation and find out why that school board's not letting you talk about something this important. You have the power, and talk with your friends. Get them to sign a petition. That'd be really interesting to have you go to the school board and ask to be a delegate. I think you could do it.
You might also take a page out of Charlie's book. If there's anyone in your group, in your school, who's adept with video, make a YouTube.
Yeah.
Put it up.
Yeah.
You may go viral.
Yeah, YouTube.
I think given the amount of talent I just heard come out of that voice, I think you'd be an excellent delegate, and
Get
I think
his
it
name.
would go viral.
I think he's our youth rep.
Questions, folks. You got to have questions. Yes, sir.
I'll start with the proposed signing of CETA through Mr. Harper's government. A lot of stuff that really isn't coming out, including foreign companies being able to sue if they can't put their dump site here or if they can't build a plant here. How's that going to affect everything in not only Ontario but Canada? Because there are so many things that there's lawsuits going on right now from big corporations suing provinces, and I can just see this spreading even more. So it's something that should really be looked into for both CETA and the Far East trade negotiations. Is basically we're selling out Canada, and this dump site is just one little part of it. And it looks like the Harper government right now has been playing behind the scenes for so long, getting all this stuff set to go. So when you try and fight your dump site, they're going to say, well, no, we can sue you if we can't put our dump site in here. So this is something not too many people are aware of, and I think it should be brought out more to the public. I don't know, Charlie, you've been doing a lot with it.
Yeah, number one, in the initial, stay focused on the dump. Get it stopped. Don't worry about down the road but on the issues, this is what we deal with at the federal level. The investor state protections, it's about taking power away from community. And they can't do it through democratic rights, they'll do it through trade agreements. And we saw in Mexico where a heavily contaminating toxic site was closed down because it was a threat to the people of Mexico and to a community. And they sued under NAFTA, and they were given tons of compensation. And the Adams Mine owners who set up this fake, bizarre numbered company tried to sue the Canadian people for $300 million after we beat them at the Adams Mine. And that went all the way to a NAFTA challenge, and they got their rear ends kicked out the door. But this is concerned. We don't know what's in CETA, so I'm not going to speculate until we see the terms of the deal. So that's something we will keep our eye on. But your folks, your eyes on stopping that dump regardless of who owns it or where they're from?
Up front, right?
My name is Graham Krellen. I've been a resident of Ingersoll since time began pretty well. My kids think that I shared the streets with the dinosaurs. But anyway, I would really like to see a name on our new lake. It's not our new lake. It's the lake that's been there for a long time. I've seen it from flying over in an aircraft, and I thought, what the dickens is that down there? And geez, it looks like a great big lake down there, right in our, outside of our town. Like, why can't we use that lake? It just looked too good to resist. And, I really still didn't know anything about it. And we recently had a gentleman of the town that thought enough of the situation to, go out there in his little boat and look around and tell us that the lake has fish. My God, what a concept. A lake with fish. Right next to where this disaster is going to be bestowed upon us. I don't think we deserve. Does anybody here think we deserve to have the potential for Canada's largest dump on our doorstep? This has been always noted for industry, lots of clean industry, lots of good things. A lot of that's gone now. We, as a community, deserve a lot better than what's going on. And I still think that our lake deserves a name. And I think that the Chippewa of the Thames, I would suggest that it would be an honor if you would put a name on our heritage, our lake. I think that I really think when you pull your little boat up alongside the road and look over towards that lake, I think that it will be indicative. How many people show up, it will be indicative of how much we care about that lake. And I think if it had a wonderful name, maybe from our friends, the Chippewa and the Thames. They have a wonderful way about them. They have been here for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think, speaking for all of you, I hope that you would all appreciate if they would name our lake. And looking at all these wonderful people in front of us, we are so damn lucky to have people in front of us, in our midst, with the brains and good looks to
That's you, Irene.
think about what's going to happen if this fails. And right now, talk about the Americans, coming and the fight that all of our ancestors had to make this place safe for us today. Good grief. Right now, we've got an army hiding just outside of town. And that's the kind of fight that Charlie's talking about. And that's exactly what's going on. We have an army of people that want everything that we have. Are we going to give it to them? That's the question. I want to thank you all for listening to some crazy old guy from Ingersoll. I've been breathing the air a long time, and it's finally getting to me. But anyway, thank you very much, folks.
I'd just like to respond to that challenge. Yes, I'll take it back to our elders, and we'll come up with a name. There is one point I didn't mention. The First Nations of Chippewa, who had owned this land up until 1812, and we did pass the land over, just the surface part of it. but we still own the bed of that Thames River down there. So, and all its floodplains. The thing that we did, we tried to stop, when we did stop London from putting a sewage treatment plant and putting the after effects of the water into the Thames. We did get an injunction about 10 years ago against them doing that, and we just wanted to delay them until we got our claim involved with it. So it's on the books now that these rivers will be protected, and any big industry now have to come. There's a law in Canada called consultation, accommodation, and consent, and with the First Nations people. So we have been able to keep Shell out in one of the big processing plant who wanted to put one right along the St. Clair River. So they moved out and they moved back to Ohio. So we are continuously are going to do those kind of things. So we will help you with that consent part of it too.
I just want to quickly add on the issue of the importance of the lake. It was a transformation in our campaign when we stopped the discussion about the Adams Mine and we started to talk about the lake. We photographed the beauty of the lake. We took posters and we went downtown Toronto and put those posters up all through the downtown because we couldn't afford to pay for advertising. And then at probably one of the key moments was when the Algonquin Nation came out and raised a flag and renamed the lake Mamawedawin, which means coming together. It was the coming together of all the people. So it was a transformation of the image of a mine which seems dark and deep and impervious to leakage, to the idea of a lake. And I love the creativity of people out with water wings and fishing rods and that. That could be your symbol, and I would take that fight into Toronto where people will pay attention.
I think we really got some stiff competition for the Toronto International Boat Show now, and that's the Oxford County Out of Water Boat Show. Let's keep that one going.
In the beginning of this meeting, you mentioned that Mr. Mackenzie said that this was out of his jurisdiction. From what I gathered this week, that this land, the quarry land, belongs to a Belgium, a foreign company that has rented it out. How can Mr. Mackenzie say that this is not a federal business? We should all call Mr. Mackenzie and tell him to do his job. Thank you.
I think I'm getting the nod from our MP friends. There's no question in my mind that we have a Canadian company, Walker Environmental or Walker Industries, who are partnering up with a foreign company. A regional office in the United States in Pittsburgh with a head office in Belgium. This is very important, and I don't think that Mr. Mackenzie should shirk away from his responsibility in looking after and watching what's going on with this issue. This is his issue, and he needs to stand up to it.
Definitely.
Back. Oh, sorry, we got one here.
Hello, I'm Todd Sleeper. I come from St. Mary's, and I came down to Beachville today to show that communities need to support other communities when there's not going to be a major dump in our area. Also, I come here representing Unifor CAW Local 88. I sit there on the Environment Committee. I'm also on the CAMI and Unifor Environment Committee there. And I just want to show you that we definitely oppose the dump. Even if everybody thought that CAMI might make benefit from the dump, it's GM's goal to go landfill free, and we will pretty well bet that there will be never any CAMI's garbage going to the landfill if it ever is built. Another thing that a lot of people are aware of is about the Thames River cleanup. I started the Thames River cleanup about 15 years ago, and it's grown to 17 communities. And every year, Beachville's involved. Kenny Ditchfield is a representative for Beachville, and Woodstock, and Ingersoll, Putnam, all the way down to the mouth of the Thames River to Lighthouse Cove. So just this year, before the 14th annual Thames River cleanup, I received an email from. Sorry about that. I received an email from Walker Environmental. I thought I'd share it with you today. And it reads, let's see, I put it on my phone, and that's kind of. It said that they would like Walker Environmental offered from the consultant manager, Walker Environmental, I'm contacting you in regards to the Thames River cleanup happening on April 20th, and we would love to support and provide services to the event. So I guess maybe they weren't aware of that. I didn't know what was going on in Ingersoll and Beachville. So I thought about it for a couple of days. And I came back and I said, thank you very much for offering support and to provide services to the 14th annual Thames River cleanup. The Thames River cleanup is organized in 17 communities and offers opportunity for everybody to celebrate Earth Day by volunteering and preserving our Canadian Heritage River for future generations. Each year, our volunteers tell us they've adopted areas and it's getting cleaner. They love to see their hard work and stewardship having paid off with such positive reaction to our cherished Thames River. Thames River cleanup is about raising public awareness, education, and respect for our most precious natural resource, water. This successful program couldn't have been possible if it weren't for our dedicated volunteers and our generous sponsors and environmental partners. The Friends of the Thames would love to enter into an environmental partnership with Walker Environmental Group, providing that Walker Industries cease their intentions to open up a landfill next to the Thames River in Beachville, Ontario. This proposed landfill is the biggest threat to the Thames River today. Garbage and other debris will blow into the river and from the landfill. Just drive by Green Lane landfill southwest of London and see all the garbage blown into the fences and the trees. This garbage will be washed downstream into other communities and pollute their parks and properties. The natural ecosystem will be devastated. Habitat will be destroyed. Water quality will deteriorate. Limestone is very porous and water can seep a long ways through the garbage, mix with rain, and into the Thames River. The proposed landfill will affect water quality of all the Thames and the groundwater in the area. It is very irresponsible to construct a large landfill next to any waterway. We highly recommend that Walker Industries does not construct this proposed landfill next to the Thames River, but looks for other holes to fill that won't have such a negative impact on our watershed. This would be a respectful thing to do, and it would be a respectful environmental partnership. Sincerely, Todd Sleeper, Friends of the Thames River.
Wow, that's quite a statement. I'm sure Walker will welcome that letter. Having met with them almost every month, they're all ears. I'm being facetious on that. Anyway, one of the things that we kind of touched on, we talked about leaking liners and how it could get into the porous rock of the limestone. Let's not forget about the leachate. What leachate is a collection of the water, the rain as it falls into the landfill. Some of you aren't familiar with it. And what it does is a collection system that's built within that liner system. And any water that gets down in through there obviously collects and picks up all of the carcinogens, all of the bad chemicals that get into and poison our fish and poison us ultimately, get into this leachate. There's an acceptable method of treating it to provincial standards. And I'm not so sure that those standards are acceptable to all of us. I think it's a tragedy that we are allowed to somehow let that leachate go into a waste treatment facility that really can't handle the compounds that are in that water. There's REEs that they're talking about. And when I talk about REEs, that's the cell phone devices and all the lithium that's inside those cell phones. Those that wind up in landfills. There's all these chemicals that we create, these compounds that all wind up. Is our waste system really able and capable of handling that kind of chemistry? I don't think so. And that's the kind of thing that will be put as a burden onto our river system, our heritage river. So think about that. Not only with the leaking landfill. Back to the room.
Thanks, Steve. Todd, you never told us what the email back to response was. Are we done here? Did they say they'd pull out, or? All right, so no response. But just 2 quick points on the federal aspect of it. The rural cemetery is right next to the lake. You can look into the lake, and and you can also look right into where the proposed dump is going to be. The Battle for Britain the service is celebrated there every year, and with a head office in Belgium, there are a lot of beautiful cemeteries maintained by the Belgian government, honoring the war dead from World War I and World War II. And I think it becomes a federal issue when you think that this country is got a company that's not going to honor the war dead on their own soil. So I think that makes it a bit of a federal issue. Also, that quarry is connected to the Thames. We, through Freedom of Information Act, found information indicating that there was a culvert that was not known about that connects the Thames to the quarry. And it behooves us to make sure that there aren't any more culverts in there connecting it directly to the lake. So oceans and fisheries should be involved in fully assessing this lake to see and protect it, as well as the Ministry of the Environment provincially. Thank you.
Hey there. Thank you so much. I think it was Charlie who made the point about that we actually are only testing for about 60 contaminants. I've heard it actually a high as 178 provincially, which again is, we've got hundreds of thousands, millions of possibilities in there. So sort of more of a comment that's going to lead to a question. One of the ways you can get around this is to do what the Olympic Anti-Drug Doping Squad does, is they don't bother with target lists, which is what we're doing. And if you check out on the target list, then you're good to go. What they do instead is they do what's called open scans, and they just see everything that's in there and give it a name. And look to see if those things. So we need to change how, of course, this is all provincial jurisdiction, so I'm not exactly sure what we can do from the federal level, other than they take their leadership, they take their instructions from Health Canada, from Environment Canada, from some sort of higher up federal agency. So we need to transition to that. But one of the things that we can do, and this would certainly be supported by our Indigenous science colleagues, is really burn the Ontario drinking water standards, because they're really not protective of little people, unborn children, pregnant women. It's ridiculous. So what we should be doing, if we wanted to protect everybody, not just those that vote, not just those that make money. If we wanted to protect the turtles and the frogs and the unborn children and the children and the adults and the grandmas and the grandpas too, is that we would adopt the Environment Canada Protection of Aquatic Species guidelines, which are protective of little caddisflies, right on up to, and the things that feed on those caddisflies. And really burn the Ontario drinking water standard, which from what I can gather is completely politically motivated to protect polluters. So that kind of a change would have to happen at the Health Canada level, at the Ministry of Health level. And I almost guarantee you, although I have no way to enforce if I win or lose, that if that kind of higher level change happens, then the provinces will follow suit. They really just are needing direction from Ottawa. And so I'm just hoping that the opposition parties, and since this is a nonpartisan thing, since we all drink water, and we all need healthy environments to live in, that this could become one of those nonpartisan kind of things that we change, get much more in line with what they're doing in Europe. And the other thing that we really, really, really need to change, and this is perhaps unique to Canada, is that we have it enshrined in the Canadian Constitution Act that First Nations are first in line for consultation and accommodation. And that does not mean that, okay, we send you a notice that says construction starts Monday. You know, that's what's been done. But Samsung demonstrated with their experience with Six Nations in 2010 that you can get through this process in good shape with everybody happy and everybody feeling included and consulted in less than 2 years for about $200,000, right? So why are we not holding everybody up to that standard? Why are we even talking with Walker through a CLC? That I haven't seen any evidence that they've consulted with the affected First Nations communities, and it is Canadian law. So given the results, the events of last week, I was watching on YouTube what's going on in New Brunswick with the fracking protests, and I'm wondering, have these people never heard of Dudley George? We obviously didn't learn very much there. And what's the problem? Well, no evidence of successful consultation and accommodation with that local Mi'kmaq First Nation. So I'm wondering, the question is, what can we do to help you in Ottawa and those people who might end up in Queen's Park to make these kinds of progressive changes happen? What do you need to see happening from the communities to give you the power and the mandate that you need in Ottawa to change how we're doing things so that we're not stuck with rules from 1978?
Well, there's a number of things you touched on that are all very profound. Certainly, I think one of the largest triggers at the federal level is the obligation to consult with First Nations, and the historic land interests. That is a major issue that can come into play. In terms of rules from 1978, I kind of wish we could keep our rules from 1978 and not go back to 1948. To tell you the truth, environment is incredibly partisan now. I mean, we've seen the shutdown of the Environmental Lakes Facility, a worldwide respected center to study the effects of chemicals in water. And the entire international scientific community said, how could Canada allow this center to be shut down? It tests for threats to groundwater. It's because they don't want to know. This is a government that is rolling back all the environmental standards left, right, and center. One of the reasons they stripped the water protections on 99.97% of the waterways in Canada is because their only focus is the pipeline. And when they get the pipeline across the river, they don't want shutoff valves on either side. And shutoff valves would do an enormous amount if you did have a blowout. If you don't have a shutoff valve and you might be 2 or 3 miles away, when it goes into your water, we see disasters like Kalamazoo. So it is the situation in Ottawa is brutal. We are now known internationally as a country that's stripping the most basic environmental protections. So how to help us? Well, we got to get rid of these guys. That's a partisan thing. There's nothing nonpartisan about it. They've got to go. But at the provincial level, and again for your federal member, I would argue this. If someone was going to, and I was a member of parliament, and I am a member of parliament, and someone wanted to stick 60 million tons of garbage or 40 million or 20 million tons into my watershed, as they tried to do, I don't care if it's a federal or provincial responsibility. If I live in the region, these are my neighbors, I'm elected to represent them, I'm elected to show up, and I do show up. And sometimes it's not my responsibility, but I have a responsibility as a neighbor. So your federal member has a responsibility, and certainly with the First Nation issues he does. In terms of the provincial issues, these are really important. The Ministry of Environment needs to be held to account. They need the standards for what they treat is abysmal. Ontario has become a joke. That's why they set these sites up here. So there's a lot of work to do. But the best way to do it is to focus on this fight, focus on this lake, and say it's getting stopped here. That's how change gets happen. So instead of worrying too much down the road, worry about what's happening with your water right here. That's how you're going to change the rules.
I'd just like to add that because I'm in close proximity here, I want to put my office at your disposal in terms of how we can help. And I've talked to a couple of people about the fact that there is a culvert running from the quarry to the river, and that becomes an issue of fisheries and oceans. Now, Charlie's right. We have a government that they don't care. This is not an issue with them, because over the last 7 years we've seen the incremental dismantling of environmental law through their budget speeches, through their omnibus bills, and it was extremely difficult to attract the attention of the media in regard to that. They were somewhere out there. But I think that these are indeed things that we can push back on, and they're very, very important. So I'm looking forward to hearing about this culvert. I have a connection there, and I'll ask questions. We'll ask questions in the House. We'll try to push back on it. But Charlie's advice about your own member of Parliament, absolutely true. Where was he when these environmental changes were happening? Where was he when they changed the Navigable Waters Act? And unfortunately, I can tell you, sitting quietly on his hands in the back of the House. So get after them, but do know that we will indeed do what we can federally. There's a loophole here, George, so we'll exploit it.
Okay. I'm going to have to wrap it up from there. One more question, and then I'm going to have to wrap it up because our guests are very, they've got to get going, and I want them for you to be able to talk to them individually as well. And so if we can just have one more question, I would really, two more questions then. Okay, one more there, please. Can you make it quick, please? Yeah.
Yes, I will. Ed Wiseman. I'm an employee at Carmoose. I started their Beachville line back in '75, so I have 38 years there. I have my button, which I will put on my clothes Monday morning. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. I encourage you to go to the boat show too.
The question I have, since the proposed landfill is in Zora, I see no one there today that has spoke from. Is there a reason for that?
Having not wanting to put her on the spot, we do have somebody here who is. I don't know, if, Mayor, if you want to say anything. We didn't actually invite the mayor, which was kind of an oversight on our behalf, but I will open the floor to her.
No, I won't be speaking today. I was not invited to speak, and I can tell you that we're quite disturbed at our council as to why Zora was overlooked. In fact, we wrote and asked why we were overlooked, and we did not get a reply. I understand that every fight has to have a villain, and I think Zora has been chosen, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding going on, a lot of misinformation. I would like you to ask Opal why Zora was not included, and then I would like you to give me the answer, because we're in this fight every bit as much as all of you. We are the proposed host. We have absolutely the most to lose.
I'm sure that the mayor would like me to apologize, and I will apologize for not inviting you to this event. I don't even have an answer for you. And I'm being quite honest with you about that. So I apologize to you that we didn't invite you as a part of this panel. We were already full with people that we had been talking about. I will say that our communication with you has been less than lackluster. So that's probably what. And we haven't been communicating all that well. So let's open up that door of communication and let's start anew. Let's start a good relationship and moving forward. Having said that, there was one more question.
I'm Carol Erickson, and I'm from Woodstock. I just wanted to make a suggestion because it was great to ask neighbors and talk to neighbors, but if each of us made a commitment to talk to 5 people and ask them to express their displeasure about the proposed landfill, and asked those 5 people to ask 5 more people and keep the chain going, it replaces a lot of advertising, and it's much more effective because it's people to people. So that's just a suggestion that I'd like to see people take up. And could you clarify when the county council meeting is, please?
Yes. Again, good point. And I encourage all of you who are here today to go back to your county or your municipality and talk to 5 individuals, if that's what it takes, because that's what's going to spread this word. Go back and tell them what you heard today. Go back to your homes. Go back to your employers and tell them what you heard today and get them involved. We employ some of the employers that we have here are one of the biggest in the world. General Motors. These people are very and have a lot of say in the environment that they are in. Let's encourage them to get involved in this as well. They're going for a recycle-free zone. Let's get them on board with this. Let's get them to help reduce the need for landfills.
Okay. The council meeting will take place on Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock, 23rd. And there'd be nothing nicer than to be able to send a message to both the government and to Walker that all 8 municipalities support this. We need representatives from all the municipalities to be able to come to the county, and certainly you won't be able to voice an opinion, but your presence will make that opinion known. So I need the support there to make sure we send the message that this isn't just a fear of Ingersoll, but it could be a fear of Tempsford, Tavistock, of Tilsonburg, of a landfill site being close to a municipality that could be phenomenally damaging to the water in our future. County council. The county council is county building is right where where the Market Square is in Woodstock. Right, Market Square, right beside it, right there, right downtown. I saw Graham. Sorry. Yes. Pardon?
Site 41. Write him down.
Yeah, we have, to answer your question, we have communicated with him. He just hasn't chosen at this point in time to join up with us. Absolutely, phone in. That's what gets him going, right? Not only the politicians, but the media people as well. If you stand up and be heard, they will come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. This is ours to stop, folks. This isn't just Opal. This isn't just the Oxford Social Justice Group. This isn't Greenwatch. This isn't all of the other affiliates. This is us. This is all of us getting together and fighting this. Yep. Yeah. I think to help out, maybe we can put that up on our website, or is that up on our website? We can probably put that up on our website as a link, and then maybe help you guys to go in there and start talking to them. I've been in touch with CBC. Doesn't seem to be high on their agenda either. And if you guys keep going and pounding away at this, they're going to start to listen and they're going to start to speak up. Okay. Folks, I'm going to end it there, okay? So what I want to do just at the end is we just got a small token of our appreciation for the speakers who came today. Okay, and I hope you accept them. They're gifts from the area. George, appreciate that. Irene, thank you very much. The gifts of it all, Charlie. Sorry, Ted. Yep. Okay.
Thank you. This is an amazing gift, and I'm very honored, but the gift I want to see from you is the headline that says this dump went down to big defeat.
I'm going to be real. Yeah, okay, I'll call her up in a minute. Okay. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
I'd just like to say just one more quick thing, and that is that the Ingersoll has been actively with this proposal from the start. Our council has been behind it 100%, and I'd just like to thank Councillor Mott and Councillor Fortner, who are here today. Our Economic Development Officer was here today, and we have the full support of the council to do whatever we can to support and help.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. I encourage you to go around to the different booths and to Charlie Angus's corner over here for signings. If you bought a book, get it signed, okay? And buy a book. I encourage you to do the reading. Oh, one more person that I really want to thank, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to ask Howard DeJong to come up and make just a quick speech about our needs. Howard, if you can hurry. While he's on his way up here, a person who's really supported us in the business community in Ingersoll, Bonnie from Coffee Culture. Where are you, Bonnie? I know you came in here. I saw you. She's been a tremendous support. She holds, she takes care of our people who do research. She lets us meet in her facility. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And the coffee's always on, Bonnie said.
Good afternoon, everybody. We want to thank everybody for coming out. There's a couple of things that we want you to know about OPO. One, we're very frugal with every cent that we get a hold of. We work every cent we've got, and we do a good job with it. One of the things that comes to play is we have had to hire a hydrogeologist, and this guy down the road is going to cost us some pretty big money. We have operated on a budget thus far, built on small donations, bake sales, cake sales, barbecues, and support from different people. Thus far, our budget for a year and a half, we've been working on somewhere just under about $13,000. And we've created a lot of things and made a lot of things happen in the last year and a half. But what we do have facing us in the near future is the bills of a hydrogeologist and legal bills from the Canadian Environmental Law Association, that part that they don't cover. What I want to share with you is the importance of those two issues. We've hired Wolf Ruland, and we've been advised when we listened to Mr. Van Hoff in Embro that when you want to make the Ministry of the Environment back up, when you need to back up a bureaucrat that's stuck in their ways, you have to have a professional of a certain stature that is respected in his field. You can't just pick somebody that's low level. Wolf Ruland comes to us of Walkerton renown. We know what that did to this province. We also know it took somebody that knows his stuff, knows his business, and was able to push the Ministry of the Environment into action. The person that is involved with CELA, the Canadian Environmental Law Association, her name is Teresa. We're also very glad to have her on our team at this point in time. Most people don't realize that her role at the time of Walkerton was she was mid-level Ministry of the Environment. She sat on the other side of the table and took the information from Walkerton and developed provincial strategy that was implemented post-Walkerton that we're dealing with. And some of those situations are what we need to use today. Wilf and Teresa together have a working relationship, and we are really blessed to be able to have that on our team. We really do appreciate the $10 and $20. And when I look that we receive in donations, but when I look around the room and I see predominantly, yes, most of us have gray hair and most of us are well established, but we're starting to be faced with bills, and it's time that we really have to dig a little bit deeper. Please pass on the message to your neighbors and friends that anybody that says this is a done deal is also part of the reason that this could fail. We need to make sure that anybody that says this is a done deal at this point in time, there is no excuse for being able to say that. As a community, it's time for us to stand up. Now, most of us Opal members are easily into this without a word of a lie for a couple of paychecks a year. And that's about as far as we can stretch ourselves. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to go that far, but we do need some contributions, folks, and in order to carry this fight forward. Thank you for coming. And, pardon me? And yes, that is very true. Thanks, Ruth. I'd like to use a comparison. Oxford County people, my wife asked me what I was going to wear today, and I said, I'm going to wear blue jeans. I'm a normal person from Oxford County. I'm slow to rise to anger. I'm slow to pick a fight. But when the chips are down, Oxford County does show up. When you look at the old pool in Ingersoll, when you talk about Ruth, when you look at the Wilson family from way back when, and the generations of like free swimming lessons that were given all through those years, Oxford County stepped up to the plate. When it was time to build an arena, it wasn't just Ingersoll that built that first arena way back when. It was Southwest Oxford, it was Zora, it was Ingersoll families together. And when Karen does her work, and with the Centerville thing that she's building for next year, we really are one community. It's not Zora, Ingersoll, and Beachville, and Southwest Oxford. We started out as Oxford on the Thames. Some politician drew a line on the map and said, that's where the line is. We are the host community, and it's time for us to count. Thanks.